Welcome, everybody, to the committee meeting of the whole. I'm going to be chairing the meeting. This meeting is from 4:30 until we finish. Could be 5 o'clock. Hopefully, we'll be done by 5, and then we'll start our budget meeting process. So we don't have much in the committee meeting of the whole right now. So what I wanted to do is discuss the resolution in support of the replacement of all lead service lines, private and public property in Utica, sponsored by Council Member Colosimo Testa, Beatrice, and Williamson. We have Mr. Morris here who'd like to make a short presentation, and then what we can do after, if anybody has any questions, we could follow with some question and answer period. But I wanted to start with give Mr. Morris the floor and make your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. All right, Mr. President, members of the Common Council, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak before you tonight. I'm especially appreciative of the support from the sponsors of this legislation, Williamson, Beatrice, and Colosimo Testa. Their support and encouragement are one of the main reasons I am up here tonight. I'd also like to thank the original members of Utica Lead-Free Water for playing a part in this movement to remove all lead service lines in the city of Utica. They are Councilperson Samantha Colosimo Testa, Katie Aiello, and Celeste Friend. Former council members Freddie Hamilton and Jack Lametico, Director of the Mohawk Valley Latino Association, Sonia Martinez, Pastor Kathy Hughes, Sparkle Anthony, and Will Javian Dawson. I am indeed Richard Morris, and I'm here to tell you about a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity available to Utica, but only if its leaders act quickly and decisively. I support the resolution to remove all lead service lines, public and private, in the city of Utica, as do these 402 signatures that I have here, and the 150 online signers of our petition, affirming that it is our right and the right of our children to consume safe, clean, lead-free drinking water throughout Utica. Can I take my mask down, sir?
Sure. You're far enough away from me. Tomorrow you can take it off anytime.
Yeah, well, that's true. Furthermore, now that we have the money to do so, we call upon the Mayor of Utica, the Utica Common Council, and the Mohawk Valley Water Authority to make a financial and moral commitment to eliminate all lead service lines in the city of Utica. We demand that these public officials compose and pass legislation beginning in early 2022 that will show their unequivocal support to replace all lead service lines and to give the citizens of Utica lead-free drinking water forever. Nationally, people's response has been the same. Voters support fully funding lead pipe removal, so should you. In an August 2021 survey, Data for Progress found that likely voters support lawmakers fully funding the removal of all lead pipes in America by a 52-point margin. There is a strong bipartisan consensus as well. I think that's important. The Natural Resources Defense Council, NRDC, estimates that between 9.7 million to more than 12 million lead service lines are distributing water throughout our nation. About 700,000 or more of these service lines are found in Illinois, while Ohio, Michigan, and New York, New Jersey, Missouri, and Wisconsin each contain more than 300,000 of the nation's lead service lines. The top 10 states total about 4 million. Making an investment into cleaning up our nation's I wanted to show this too because, let me stop this a minute. I don't know if you can see this, but this is the outline of Oneida County. So I showed you that New York State is one of the worst states, and unfortunately, our county is one of the worst of that group. So making an investment in cleaning up our nation's water supply would generate $38.3 billion in labor income, $11.7 billion in taxes, and $53.9 billion in additional value to the economy. That would represent a 120% return on investment, in addition to the jobs created and value added to the economy from this activity. Additional benefits like increased positive health outcomes would be generated, It has been estimated that an additional $22,000 of societal benefits are generated for every lead pipe replaced as a result of lower cardiovascular disease. Since in many areas, lead service lines are more likely to exist in environmental justice communities, and since Black and Latino children have disproportionately high overall lead exposure, replacing these pipes will also greatly benefit low-income and minority households. Failing to address these disparities risk having to defend an environmental justice civil rights lawsuit. Information about one such legal action has been provided in the supporting documentation. The scientists say that there is no safe level of lead in a child's bloodstream. Oh, by the way, let me just stop this here. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about Oneida County. The Department of Health in New York State changed the level in which they consider elevated for a kid to have further confirmation and investigation. So it went down to 5 now. The problem is these regulations keep going lower and lower and lower because we already discussed that the government organizations and the scientists say no level is safe. So it happened in October of 2019, so you see that's why there's a skyrocket here. And the problem that I had is, you know, from when I had my talk show years ago, I always used to talk with the Department of Health and Pat Fesher from the Water Authority and Connie Schreffel and all that, trying to get a beat on, you know, what's the situation here. Well, the problem is, although it's gotten better, we don't test a third of the kids in our area for lead, that they're still not being screened. So our numbers are actually going to be higher, and they're already pretty high. So this is a major problem that I see. Let me go to the next slide. Okay,
Thank you for speeding up the process, thank you.
We're getting there, Frank. Scientists say that there is no known safe level of lead in a child's bloodstream according to the EPA, CDC, American Academy of Pediatrics, and a plethora of medical and scientific organizations. Utica in particular is one of the highest percentages of lead poisoned children in New York State, a ranking that has persisted for many years and shows no signs of lessening. Lead is a powerful neurotoxin that bioaccumulates in the human body over time. The EPA says that in homes with lead pipes that connect the home with the water main, also known as lead service lines, these pipes are typically the most significant source of lead in the water. I'll read that again. These pipes are typically the most significant source of lead in the water. EPA says that 20% of adults' lead intake comes from water, while infants and small children, the percentage can be as high as 60 or 70%. Just a few slides here that gives you an idea of the kinds of things I was talking about. Adults, more health effects, and a lot of times the problem is for lead poisoning, you can't really tell, it doesn't show signs, but in adults, one of the most gruesome forms is it affects people's teeth. And there's actually a name for that. It's called a Burton line between the gums and the teeth, and that's how you can tell they have lead poisoning. EPA says, okay, so although the primary threat is to pregnant women, their fetus, infants, and children, drinking water is a source of lead exposure for almost all people. Even low levels of lead in the bloodstream of a child can do damage to the central and peripheral nervous system. Among the health effects are behavior and learning problems, lower IQ and hyperactivity, slow growth, hearing problems, anemia, and even death. In adults, lead can cause heart problems, increased blood pressure, incidence of hypertension, decreased kidney function, and as I mentioned, gruesome teeth and gum damage, and even reproductive problems. Some studies have also linked child lead poisoning with violence and criminal activity in later life. I know that's an interest of Katie Aiello. The CDC and Environmental Defense Fund say each lead-exposed child costs an estimated $5,600 in medical and special educational services. Lead exposure-related cognitive impairments cost an estimated $50.9 billion annually in lost U.S. economic productivity. So lead pipe removal will provide many health benefits and savings while protecting our precious children. Lead pipe removal should be thought of as a huge opportunity for our city, though. Removing the lead service lines actually pays for itself and can be a huge economic stimulus. Think jobs, jobs, and more jobs. About 84% of all jobs created through this investment are in construction, 52% professional and business services, 24%, and manufacturing industries, 8%. Insofar as the bulk of these jobs involve high-skilled construction occupation, the jobs created will provide good wages and training opportunities for local residents and promote economic benefits to affected communities. Minnesota Health Department weighed the cost of removing all lead pipes versus health benefits, concluded that the money spent to reduce lead in the drinking water would be expected to yield a return of at least twice the amount of the investment. Others have said that, as I mentioned, $22,000 per line for health and economic benefits. And in a more wide-ranging study, the state of Minnesota found that the benefits to the public and economy of replacing the lead service lines from 10 to 18 times greater than the cost of replacements. Higher property values are an additional potential economic benefit of lead service line replacement. A study in Pittsburgh found that the removal of lead service lines may increase home worth and translate to household wealth. Replacing lead service lines also generates equity benefits due to the disproportionate presence of lead service lines in many low-income and minority communities. The impact of replacing these lines could not only affect historically disadvantaged communities, generational health and income, but could also raise the value of their homes and therefore their wealth. It is known to all that the EPA and the CDC has been tightening the regulations regarding lead in the drinking water. And maybe we'll have a discussion with Mr. Bescher, but my statement is a community cannot chemically additive, study, filter, run their tap water, or boil their way out of the fact that all lead service lines will have to be removed from their municipalities, businesses, and residents. Now, there is some hope because statistical data analysis, machine language, artificial intelligence is being used in cities to speed up the identification of lead pipes. While statistical methods can help all types of communities, they provide the greatest benefits in cities with greater uncertainty. Data-driven analysis powered by fundamental statistical methods and machine learning can allow communities to accurately inventory lead service lines and accelerate their removal in the most efficient and cost-effective way. Compared to a conventional approach, the statistical model allowed the replacement crews to better target homes for replacement, empowering decision makers with data to save tens of millions of dollars and accelerate the removal of lead pipes. Blue Conduit, I think there's an association with, okay, is one of the leaders in this methodology and have many case studies to prove that their methods work. Furthermore, there's new trenchless digging. You don't have to dig up your whole lawn to replace and put in new piping, and an obvious savings in time and landscaping. These are some reasons why cities are completing the process of lead service line removal in record time. Newark replaced 18,000 lead lines in 30 months. Benton Harbor, Michigan will start the contractor work this month and expects to complete the work of the removal of 4,000 lead service lines by the spring of 2023. We can do it too, but it requires bold visionary leadership to get our act together and to start the process of lead service line removal immediately. By passing this resolution, this legislative body sends a strong signal that you are strongly committed to a healthy and economically vibrant community. And lastly, the city of Utica has received a once-in-a-lifetime infusion of federal and state monies, which can solve a multi-generational health problem that has vexed our city for decades. Just a small portion of the American Rescue Plan Act funds put in a separate account can jumpstart the process of the elimination of the lead service lines and this health hazard. Only these ARPA funds and the $600K from New York State at present are large enough and flexible enough and can be used to remove lead service lines on private property. That is why the resolution states that these funds be set aside in a separate account, allowing the process of lead service line removal to begin. It is imperative not to wait for the Mohawk Valley Water Authority and administration to foot drag on this. And if and when the Mohawk Valley and the city eventually address lead service line removal, either due to federal mandate or an environmental justice lawsuit, it would be too late for the residents.
All
The
right,
ARPA
thank you,
funds
Mr.
would-
Morris. That's good.
Just 30 seconds, please.
Okay.
The ARPA funds would most likely be spent, or their deadline, end of 2024, to be used would have passed. Therefore, residents may not have any funds available to help them remove their lead service lines on private property.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
I know the council members, I don't know if we wanted further discussion on this. We could wait till next meeting. I'd rather do that. If Mr. Morris, if anybody has any questions, you could ask him any questions right now. But I would like to discuss this further at another meeting so we can get our budget process started tonight. I don't think we have anything else that's in committee of the whole that's in dire need, so we can move on. Anybody have any questions? Okay, we'll discuss
Thank
it
you,
further.
sir. I
Thank you. You
appreciate it.
could
Okay.
break down if you want to.
Okay. I can do that quietly. Quietly, I can do it while you're talking.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Somebody want to take over the finance? Mr. Miola?
I usually yield the floor to Heather because
Okay.
Heather usually runs it.
All right.
If that's possible, my colleagues doesn't mind.
That's fine. Heather, you can go in order of what you choose. I know, first of all, let me say this. I know it hasn't been E&A approved yet. So I think what we can do as a council as a whole here and listen to it while we're all here at the budget meeting, since we're going to end the council of the whole meeting, we'll start the budget process. What we can do is still treat it the same, ask questions, and if there's any change by E&A, we could always come back to it and look at it later on and schedule another meeting. But if nothing's going to be changed, it doesn't hurt to search it out. Everybody give your opinion and talk to department heads, whoever it may be, to discuss the budget. So take over. Thank you.
So Diana Corey is here today representing the Comptroller's office. She's the Deputy Comptroller. If you'd like to come on up. The Comptroller's department is listed on page 14 of your budget. I have an extra one here if anybody needs it. That is their expense side of their budget. And Diana is also happy to answer any questions as it relates to the Comptroller's office and revenues.
The only question that I have, what is the order that we're going, Comptroller, Clerk?
Well, he just said to me to go the order that you want, so
Well,
I.
police was technically first. then-
Well, it was listed there, but it doesn't mean it was technically. He said I could go in the order. And right now, our police department is up interviewing candidates because
Okay.
last week, as you may recall, you approved hiring, so.
Right, so that, okay. so
I told that
oh,
they could come at 5 o'clock.
Comptroller,
Yes, and I'm also gonna have Pam Wells second because she's our purchasing director.
purchasing.
Bill Borrell is here from our court
Thanks.
counsel's office. Then there's me representing the mayor's office and the budget office, and then police.
Okay,
And then
that sounds good.
Our city clerk,
Oh,
obviously.
Our city clerk, nope, that's why I sent out the invites.
Okay, and then
Okay.
assessor.
Because some people can't make it, and I'm trying to make sure that we get everyone in.
Okay.
Okay?
Is the assessor here too?
The assessor will be coming. So a little bit about the Comptroller's office and a big change that happened, actually two big changes this past 2 years. As you may recall, in last year's budget, we had some early retirements. One of them was the individual that was managing our parking ticket station down near the Comptroller's office. The Comptroller's office took over that function this year with a lot of added extra duties. In doing so, they also got involved a little bit with the police department because the police department is changing their software as they do as a function of parking tickets, and is now being tied in with our Munis system, which is our general bookkeeping accounting system that we use for human resource, and all accounting functions, payroll functions within the city. And so I believe if you look a little bit at their office equipment line and software, especially software, the numbers seem a little bit large, and that's because we have purchased the parking ticket module, and they also are going to have to update the Munis system this coming year. So that's why those numbers are a little more inflated than what you're used to seeing. Also under contracted services, there is updates that we have vendors that come in that work with our software to update it. So those are the biggest changes as it relates to the Comptroller's office. Nothing particularly different as it relates to salaries, other than Bill Morehouse, as you know, is receiving a 6% increase as provided for through our charter, and then 3% raises through CSEA.
Right. And
Okay.
she gets what CSEA gets?
Yes.
I know you're not CSEA, right? But normally it's adjusted through CSEA.
Correct.
Okay. Is any of that retro on CSEA for it?
That is not.
No,
No,
that's
it's
just
not.
three-
Actually, the retro will be paid this year, in this fiscal year. And we will have some extra money, if you will. We did budget for another person, which was not filled.
Okay.
We have since taken that out, not to say it might not be put back in, because we are short-staffed. We've got some retirements coming up. But anyway, we'll have the money to pay that out.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
I have a question. I have a question. So our year-to-date on postage, we're at 4656. We're budgeted for 15,000. I assume that has to do with the fact that we send out, it has to do with the first tax bill?
Taxes, delinquent notices.
Right.
All of that.
And
Yeah,
and
those
we
have
do-
not gone out yet.
Right, so the city tax bill is the big chunk of that, and that goes out the second we've passed the budget, correct?
Right. Well, that will go out in April, right.
Right.
But the year-to-date, we have redemption notices going out. or
Okay.
Not redemption, late notices, I'm sorry.
Okay, and so then, so the postage and the printing are so the postage, that makes sense to me, but then why are we're almost up to date with you would think that like the printing and the postage would be like mirror images of the two. No, okay, so explain that to me.
No, so, I actually remember this a couple months ago, they need a little more money because they printed checks, right? They buy boxes and boxes of checks at one time, so you just never know when you're gonna run out of checks. We also do work for the school district, so from time to time, if we get a special deal, this year we got some special deals on a bunch of different things, just so we
Okay.
around the budget.
Okay, that was all I had. Thank you very much, Diana.
Anybody else?
Yeah, how come on this bank fees line, there's no charges?
Nothing expended out of the line.
Because actually there hasn't been any bank fees. We've had what they call compensating balance, so they haven't charged us anything.
Really good. Okay.
Yeah.
That means we have enough cash in the bank.
Right.
Exactly.
That's good.
Okay.
I just have one question. Is there anything in your office that you've done new recently or anything like that, like online, anything in regards to that?
Anything
I mean,
new regarding
yeah, like,
banking?
Just like online, I mean.
No,
just
it's
purposes
the
and
same.
stuff
We've
like that,
been
just very
online
similar.
for.
Yeah, I didn't know if we did
basically,
anything.
pretty much since I got here, I tried to update things as much as I could, get it more into the 21st century.
But parking tickets are gonna go online with this new system.
Oh, they
So,
are?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if
So
that was,
think
I didn't wanna throw you under the bus, but can you elaborate on that? Munis
On the
system?
parking?
Yeah.
Yes, well, the police department's software is actually obsolete by the end of this year, I think it is, right? So we are going with the Brazo system that's through Munis, and it will all be done through handhelds. Each officer will have a handheld. People can pay online now instead of having to come in, like they can pay taxes. We have a web payment for taxes, so they'll be
Yeah,
able
we
to pay
do that
online.
now. I don't
Not
do it. My wife
exactly
pays
sure when
all
that's
my
going
bills.
in, but, what's that?
No, just kidding. Go ahead.
So, yeah, hopefully that will be going, and the nice thing about it, it's gonna be in Munis. So right now, our cashiers are running to a different computer to put in tickets, to pay tickets, to find tickets, whatever. It'll all be on their same computer system.
Good, it'll
Be able to
streamline
go through a
operations,
different
good.
module, so.
Good. No more questions?
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you.
You're free to leave.
Dan, if you wanna come on up?
Thank you very much, Dan.
I don't know if the wait last year, we did everything through Zoom. Pam Wells was appointed about 1.5 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, by the mayor to be our purchasing officer. She came from the Comptroller's office. She had been there several years. She had I believe her background was banking. Yeah. Banking. And she's done an excellent job for us. She's constantly coming down with vouchers saying, I don't think this is the lowest price. I don't think we got 3 quotes. And makes everybody, I don't want to say crazy, but she does a fantastic job. So maybe you could just talk a little bit about, I know you don't have a big cost center here, but since people don't know you, maybe talk a little bit about what your day is like and what you do check on.
Speak loud, because
Okay.
You can take your mask off if
Sorry.
you want.
Okay.
You can take your mask off.
Well, every day is completely different, so, depending on what the department's needs are, if someone needs paper, or there's a project going on. Recently I helped, Lonnie with snow tubes. We were hoping to get that going, and I don't think that fell through. But I would reach out to New York State Contract, trying to see if the item he's looking for is on contract, is the price better on contract, or can we find it cheaper off contract? Kind of just ensuring that the departments are adhering to the policies. I guess I know the best out of all of them, so they're just like, where can we get this item?
yeah. Do you communicate with the county often and try to, buy in bulk, so you, or is it?
Right now, I'm mainly dealing with the county through like the print shop. We do a lot of printing through them. They seem to be like the best price.
Okay, good.
And sometimes we can't always use them, we want to. Recently, we just updated our handbook, our employee handbook. We sent it out, we haven't had it in probably a decade. So Pam reached out, we actually got a better price from PJ Green.
I was very surprised on that. I was like, I couldn't believe the county couldn't beat PJ Green, but PJ Green must just buy a lot more paper,
You keep cutting those coupons out, they're good, thank you.
I just have a couple questions. So you obviously, and that was one of my main questions, is obviously piggybacking off any state contracts as far as purchasing and whatnot. What is a recent purchase that you've done off the state contract, just out of curiosity?
Probably the youth equipment, right?
Yeah.
What was that?
Yeah, the gym equipment.
The gym equipment, for what? What was it?
For the Parkway Rec Center.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we found a business located out in Syracuse.
And that's
I
where
guess-
it worked. Lonnie went out, got a price, he found somebody he liked. We came to the council, we had to move some money. Then Pam got her hands on it and said, I don't think this is the best price, because he also wanted to come along with the service for a couple of years. She went to work, got I think a better price, a better service that he wasn't even aware of. But that's where the checks and balances kick in. He thought he was doing the right thing, and he was, but when she kicked in, we got something better for the city.
And then the school district also buys off state contracts, so he was able to reach out to someone in that field, or I don't know, in that like gym equipment area, and he was able to, so there was like a rapport. So someone else was able to give like a good recommendation too, because they also buy off contract.
The only other couple questions that I have, do you, as far as like inventory goes, like do you have a list of items inside the city, like bigger purchases, like because I was trying to get a hold of like the list of vehicles that we had, things like that, and I know that the last
I think the vehicles
purchasing
is
director,
handled.
and that's what I mean, like is there, do you
I think
have
that's
like a
in
list of?
the comptroller's handles.
Is it
vehicles.
the engineering, Gene?
I tried to reach out to the engineering department, I haven't heard back from anybody, so
Mike's
that's
been
fine.
away, so I'll make sure you get the list.
And I heard that, so that's fine.
Okay.
I remembered it was under the purchasing director purview before. And what other work do you do, like, with other municipalities? Like, I mean, my father-in-law was the purchasing director of the county, so a lot of things that we did was, purchase them, and they would come in and help us, so, I mean, I always found that to be useful, when we were selling items and things like that, to make sure that the county, we kind of piggybacked off of them, but, I mean, if you're saying that.
Actually, like the water board, because they also purchase off contract too, so will work with me sometimes when it goes towards like Staples, like ordering on contract.
And does it come out of your department, like if we were to sell something, like sell it on eBay or something like that, or is it more of like a individual department type thing?
It comes out of it comes to a revenue line, so I think there's just one revenue line for sale of assets.
Just one other question. I see it said provisional.
Yes.
She has to take a test, or
Yes.
what's the,
So part of the problem with the pandemic is all tests stopped for about a year and a half. Now, all of a sudden, a flood of tests is happening from police and fire. So you're gonna see a lot of provisionals this year, and it's just a function of the state was not offering the tests.
right, is the test coming up?
Has yours been
Is
announced?
there
yet?
anything in the near future?
There was one in December and the state canceled it for some reason, we don't know
Okay.
why, and they didn't give like a.
So your status will stay provisional until
Yeah.
you get the top three. You have to get the top three, and then they'll be able to pick
Yeah.
you
So I get a
off
lot
the
of time
list.
to study, I guess.
Well, okay. All right, yeah, I mean, you've been sitting in the seat, and I don't have any complaints, so that's good. Anybody, any other questions on the purchasing?
The woman looks for savings, Pam Peter, Pam
Yeah.
Peter. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. Bill Borrell is here representing the Clerk Counsel's Office. That's on starts on page 17. I do want to note, the majority of his office did get 3%. There were 2 individuals, they got a very small increase, more than 3%. And that's because of the type of work that they've been doing on behalf of the city. And I will open it up to questions for Bill. And we also want to point out, I forgot what line it's on, or what page it's on, settlements and judgments. We've had another, I hate to say, it's on page 23, another fairly successful year as it relates to judgments and settlements after working with the Court Counsel's Office.
What page are we on here?
We're on, for his expenses, starting on page 17.
17.
But on page 23, there's the judgments and settlements line. We've put enough away, if you look at those prior years under judgments and settlements, we've put enough away for those lawsuits that we have outstanding that we feel we may have a liability on the books. But at this point, we don't know that we're gonna be accruing for this year, which is pretty exciting. So that's why we did not put up the settlements and judgments.
Did you make a separate line for judgments that I could have sworn?
Yeah, it's on page 23.
No, I know, but wasn't there like a fund that was started for settlements? I could have sworn I heard something along that
I
line.
think, are you talking about our accruals?
Yeah, I can't remember. There was something that I heard that it was settlements that they,
Yeah, so,
that they separated another fund.
well, no, so what we do, or you wanna?
Oh, no.
No, so.
You're the budget director.
Yeah. As your prior auditor, one of the things that we noticed when I was your prior auditor, a decade ago, was that you were not putting money away for those judgments and settlements that you believed you had a risk of losing, right? So, and you're able to do it for the year in which the liability took place. And so what we've been doing is putting money away. It's accrued. It's not in a separate bank account. It's just part of it's minus from your fund balance. And so money is put away for those payments. That's why if you look at that judgment and settlements line, you see some awfully big numbers a couple of years ago that kind of grouped all those together. So that's why we're pretty excited that we're not seeing those big numbers anymore.
Oh, yeah, and obviously I remember that you based that fund on settlements that you knew you were gonna have as well, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was quite a bit.
750,000.
750, we took
That was just
250 from you.
partial. That was a partial payment.
This depends on the year what we
Yeah,
get.
you
It's
gotta,
kinda like
I know, you gotta push it up a little, I got it.
But we've been fortunate enough to have some really talented people in our court counsel's office, and they've been really successful in fighting certain types of cases on our behalf. And that's why Bill has really worked hard with his department to make sure that salaries are where they need to be, to make sure we keep the talent that we have.
The only other question that I have as far as contracted services, is that for like, I remember like Ed and Ed and stuff like that, but is there other attorneys that are on contract on
Yeah.
that line?
Yeah, there's, we pull other attorneys' bills out of there too. So for example, we have labor negotiations, we use Legal the BOCES consortium, at a reduced rate, which helps out quite a bit. And when we have to have outside counsel, that's what we use. So we kind of gauge that fund about what we have the year coming up. Yeah. For example, when we have, a conflict case where we can't represent, there's a policeman or whatever in the city, we have to get outside counsel.
Yep.
So we have to have that fund there. That's like last year, we actually paid quite a bit.
And I know Bill hasn't had an opportunity to attend the past couple meetings that you had, but there's been some questions about our 207As and Cs. And recently, Bill and his office has hired outside counsel not to prosecute those cases or defend those cases, but to get more professional guidance and training on how to manage those cases. And that will be coming out of that line too.
Yeah, Paul Sweeney out of Kaufman Gearhout out of Binghamton. Our Armor Festine retired last year. He was doing all our 207As and 207Cs. So now we've asked Joe McBride, tasked him with it, to do those. And Joe's kind of new to that. All right, he's doing all of our disciplines, things like that. So the police and fire were using Paul kind of as a sounding board. They pretty much have a lot of input on this stuff. They kind of teach it across the state.
Yeah. Question, how often do you actually go to Albany or contact the 207A lawyers or whatever it may be to look into a case? Is it every year, once a year, twice a year?
No, this is the first time we've actually started using, we just started
Okay.
using Paul Sweeney,
So they can go, they'll talk to the powers to be in Albany, hopefully make a decision on some of these firefighters maybe getting off the city books. Okay.
That's the thought, not only to help us strategize how to work these, cases for us,
Yeah.
but also if they have any inroads down in Albany, to help us out, like, hey, look, why are we on the bottom of the pile, not in the top? We have some 207A and 207C cases for years.
When you see a person on 10 years, 12 years, whatever, that's it's crazy. The decision should have been made 10 years ago.
Why, I checked.
If they're physically unable to perform,
I wanted to call you, but they, I was talking to the senior leadership of the firefighters back then, and a lot of their paperwork wasn't submitted from here for them. I mean, that's why people have been on there for 10 years. In one case, a lot of paperwork has not been submitted from the city's municipality to the state to get them off our books. This is what I hear, and I was gonna follow up on it, and I said, well, you're here now, so I just asked you, but, I've always wondered, from the beginning I got out here, how do you track these things? You said you're hiring this law group to come in and
Yeah,
start
it's a
checking
good start.
207A. This is about 8 years ago, when this happened. You said you were bringing in,
Are you talking about risk management, Patron?
Patrol, and they were supposed to do all this.
I don't mean to interrupt you guys, but we gotta use our mics, otherwise we
Oh, I
can't.
know, I forgot.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes-
All right, thanks.
Take care of all these 207As and Charlies and stuff. That's what my understanding was back then, that they were supposed to do all this and get a report on where we're gonna be at. Well, that never came to light. Now you're hiring another law group to check into this.
Well, so Patron was risk management, we had about 2 years, okay, and then not that they disbanded, but they weren't up here doing the risk management anymore, so we weren't able to use them anymore. So we went along on our own, using Armor Festine, for the last 3 or 4 years until last year when he retired. So again, Paul Sweeney from Kaufman and Gearhart is not just, he's not gonna do all of our cases, we're still handling many of them in-house, okay? So we're going to him just on some of the more particular difficult ones that we wanted some guidance on.
so that money that's budgeted will be going towards
Sounds
that
good.
attorney.
Did we ever get anything from Patron, from the risk management?
Oh, yeah.
Was there an actual
yeah.
report?
Oh, yeah, no, we got.
Is there any way you can get a copy of that?
Yeah, we got,
Foil it.
We did that,
We
they
got
also did the
different-
emergency plan.
emergency plan, we got some policies, we got a lot of policies from them.
Well, yeah, I mean, if I could, because before I left, I asked,
Yeah.
for them to come in, and then they, obviously they
Yeah, good
know
news.
more of a firm.
Yeah.
So, if I could, that would be
Yeah.
nice.
But, Councilperson, I'm thinking that right now, as far as we know, because we checked on this, we don't owe the state anything anymore as far as any kind of paperwork. Because we checked up on that, we keep actually emailing them, asking them, when are we gonna be heard? For example, one of the cases has been languishing down there, actually I think either the doctor retired or the ALJ retired in the middle of a hearing. So it's kind of like in that.
So
Then they
the
start all
next-
over again.
Then they start all over
The
again.
next question, so I was talking to Frank earlier, about a month ago, when we were talking about this. Do we need to send legislation up from this body up to our representatives at the state level and the comptroller, say, why is a guy sitting on 207? No, hear me out, for 10 years, 8 years, 6 years, whatever the case may be, and we're paying the full gambit, and on top of that, we can't replace them.
In other words, what he's asking for is there
Exactly.
any other direction we
I
may
think it's a
recommend to the
vote.
state?
Well, so 2 things. Good question, okay? 2 things. First of all, I asked the mayor, we asked him to call the comptroller all the time. He does on our behalf. He tries to kick these things, get them up to the top. So he's got a pretty good communication with, Napoli, so, and it has worked in the past.
So should there be a law like after so many years, the state's gotta take them? After like 2 years maybe?
Wouldn't that be nice? But you have no control over it.
No,
right.
but what I'm getting, no. what I'm
Asking the
getting at-
state legislators
at
to
a-
maybe,
At a legal,
Yeah.
as a legal point of view, what I'm
it's a good
saying
point,
is,
Mark.
if we set it up to say button shop, he's our
Yeah, yeah.
representative board. And we put this legislation that Frank and I were discussing earlier, you know, as a whole, and then send it up to food chain and say, hey, you know, this is ridiculous. I mean, I think it's a point, we got, what, 8 people on the fire, and maybe 5 on the police, maybe?
It was six on the fire.
Yeah, I mean, and we can't refill their positions.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when does it become a public safety thing? Say we had 20 guys sitting down.
Well, they have callbacks, so I mean, they always have the minimum, okay, because of the minimum
Yeah,
annual laws.
we still have to
But
fill
the
their slot.
overtime,
Well,
no,
we
we
pay.
killed on the overtime.
We do.
I agree.
We killed on the
We get crushed.
overtime, though, is that right?
Yeah.
We killed on the
I don't think it
overtime.
would hurt for a body to send it to our legislators, state legislators, to see if they can maybe come up with a law where if they're not a certain amount of time, like you said, they have forced to make a move, whether, you know, one way or the other, but,
I think it was a public safety. thing
Yeah.
as well, 'cause
Will they have recommendations for time limit on how
Right.
long we should be on?
You know, I mean, anything, I mean, for us, anything over here, right? I mean, you
well,
know,
the risk management report should say that.
you know, if you send a resolution,
It should have it on it.
They did tell us that they were specifically looking into that and that they were going to, in each department and
No,
making
we
sure
get
that those
report.
were all filed
Can you
away.
give us a recommendation? We'd like to send a resolution up to
Absolutely.
our state officials, and maybe they can re-examine the law that's stated there and help other municipalities in the same
Absolutely.
issue.
Because they're in the same situation. I mean, that's what we were told.
okay, let's get back to the budget process.
I got a question.
As long as we get you, you're on the stand, you know that, right?
I got that, I got that.
Anybody have any other questions?
Yeah,
regarding
just one
budget?
question. Is there any pending, do you guys foresee any large pending judgments or settlements coming up that we have to deal with?
This year, oh, sorry.
Not that aren't accrued, not that we haven't put money away for if we think we're not going to win. If we don't think we're gonna win, then we put money away. I asked Zach the other day, he kind of manages that process for Bill, and he doesn't see anything at the moment.
Uh-oh,
He doesn't see anything as of today. But, you know,
your car insurance.
we could get served tomorrow for something that happened 3 years ago. I mean, and that happens occasionally, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we're good with the numbers, Joe.
Celeste?
I have a question. So first of all, I really like the fact that there's this new column in here, that year-to-date, which is for only 2 days ago, which is great. I'm looking at contracted services, year-to-date, we're at 69,817. You asked for 175, and the mayor is authorizing 125. Why, if you're only at 69 now with less than 2 months to go,
I don't know what bills are gonna be coming in.
right?
All right, that's number one.
So some of it could be work that's already done, but you just haven't gotten billed yet. Okay,
Exactly. So
Okay.
that's one of the problems.
okay,
I asked for more than 175. After we talked to Zach and we went around, we figured out 125 would probably be okay.
Okay.
After we resolved some issues that we had, so I think.
but it's not that you've only spent 69 at this point, because there may be outstanding bills, right, okay. All right, that's very helpful.
So I'll give you a great example. Up until about 6 months ago, we were doing executive orders. And the cost of the postage and the mailing of those, we had to keep coming to E&A to move money, because we were required to do them every 10 days, I think every 10 days. And just the costs associated with that were unexpected. So often, he'll have expert witnesses, he'll have transcribers coming in doing things. We may not get a bill for 3 or 4 months, and then all of a
Okay.
sudden it'll show up.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense, thank you.
Do you plan on adding another attorney just for Samantha Plasmotesta at any point in time? I'm just kidding. I'm breaking it.
Sure.
The only other question, what is your membership? Like, what is that? Is
Yeah,
that for
just
NICOM or is it for you guys?
Oh,
The 1,500?
You want me to answer that too?
Memberships.
yeah, that should be,
So
memberships would be nice.
most of his lawyers belong to the local bar.
In the bar.
And it's not just about the membership per se, they also have to do required professional training every year to keep their license.
Yeah.
And so that bar membership also pays for that training.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
It's
didn't
for
know
the
if it was
CLE, stuff
I
like
didn't
that.
know if that was actually like, if this, like for law, libraries or anything like that, if we ever wanted to look, you know.
No, we have a law library.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we have one on our corporation council office too, but
Oh.
that's covered.
Yeah, because I think
under
under subscriptions, they have the software to go in on that's why it's what subscriptions are
That's
for.
what
It's
the
not
software is.
magazines, it's for legal research.
Yeah, the book cost was so astronomical, a few years ago, we switched over to, you know, everything's now coming in electronic, so
Yeah,
it
it's
saves
much
us a
easier
heck
that
of
way, you can just Google
Yeah.
search it.
Any other questions? Yes, sir, Mr. Neal.
Just, you know, Mark's got a real good point, we can save some money with those, you know, problem cases.
Right.
You know, it's better because at the legislative level, state legislative level, if we get other counties and municipalities aboard on one ordinance or resolution that we can draw up, and I think we can start, a movement here, is possibly that we can get every county within the state aboard, because why would they say no to it? And once that's accomplished, I think we'll have a good push after that, Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, just send it to Mary Ann, when you're,
Yeah.
take it from there.
So if we can get something drawn up, I'll ask the judge, and we'll stop the session, and get something drawn up, with the results.
That's fine. Yeah, that's good.
Are we good?
Anyone else?
Yes,
You
sir.
got it easy.
Is that?
He always does.
You can punch out.
I do have a question.
Thanks.
One more, actually, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh.
Did, during COVID, did we get backlogged on cases? Like, do we have more coming up now that we are trying to catch up, or what happened?
Yes and no. What do I mean by that? Typical lawyer answer, right? So, did we get a backlog? Well, the courts kind of shut down, okay? Not kind of, they shut down. So everything was virtual, and then they just put everything off. So now we're getting more of a kind of a rush of cases in, just trying to speed things up a little bit more. So, yeah.
But
Yeah.
Thanks.
Good.
We talked about it anyways.
Anyone else? All set?
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
Can we do the chiefs now while they're here?
Sure.
Chiefs, would you like to stop up? The police department begins, their expense side begins on page 23. The chiefs can, of course, speak for themselves. I do want to mention two key things this year for them. Their budget really didn't change very much, other than between two different cost centers, between, I believe, CID and patrol, there was a transfer of a unit, because if you take a look at the revised budget for between the 2 years, one went up pretty drastically and one came down, I think by 600,000. And I know he and I spoke about that, and he's going to address that a little bit tonight. And I will tell you, for transparency purposes, we are 2 years in arrears. I believe 2 years in arrears, Chief, for the collective bargaining agreement. 2 years? 1 year? 2 years?
Yes, 2 years, almost 2 years.
Almost 2 years. So I'll open up Chairman Durango to.
I want to know why you didn't get a raise. You deserve a raise. Everybody else got one. That's first.
I will say on that behalf, and I actually spoke with the chiefs with.
Are you negotiating at home?
That they are on the same timetable as their collective bargaining unit,
Okay.
which is not the same for the fire department.
Okay. One other, I see a grants administrator. I talked to this last year or the year before. There's no group that are affiliated with. We do have one?
Let me address that. It's been in the budget for a while. We weren't able to hire anybody. And the main reason was because for the past, since 2012, to give you a little background, we have not had a actual grant writer. We've been holding that office, maintaining and managing grants with a police officer. Whenever we have a grant opportunity, we do our best with the collection of police officers to write that grant. Now, that works well for state grants because they're basically almost guaranteed and to fill in the blanks. What we're missing out on is the federal grants, where you're in competition with cities from all over the United States. So we just recently hired an experienced grant writer from Utica County. She's going to be starting on February 28th.
Beautiful.
And we're taking the officer that has been in that office doing, maintaining grants, and he'll be out in the street.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yes,
If they could help with the fire department, I would appreciate it.
you got it.
Go ahead.
The grant, right, you're looking for federal grants, correct?
Yes.
That's the one we're weak on, trying to apply for federal grants?
Yes.
Of course, we're gonna apply to Schumer, is that correct?
For which grant?
Every grant for federal
If they come available, we're gonna try for them. The only thing we gotta be careful with grants is that there are stipulations put in some of these grants. And it depends, some are geared more for larger police municipalities. If we meet the guidelines, we certainly will apply for it.
Yeah, Councilman, so a lot of those grants require a letter of support. And anytime we've needed a letter of support for a federal grant, we've reached out to his office. He's always provided it for us. Yeah, where we're really lacking is just the actual, the experience of the grant writer to fill out federal grants. They're much more detailed than state grants, and that's where there's hopefully this fills in that gap.
The other eye opener is, it's kind of interesting when you get denied a grant, they actually give you a narrative of the strengths and weaknesses of your grant application. And, you see very clearly, we need an experienced grant writer to compete with these other police departments across the country.
Excellent,
Yeah.
excellent. Thank you, Chief.
Question. I see there's 7 openings or something, or 8 openings for police officers here.
Seven.
Okay, 7. Does not include the 5 that we just,
That's right.
okay, so are we gonna have a line item there?
We are, and I couldn't put it in yet because I didn't know what was happening last week, and by the time everything was getting ready to be printed.
It's probably
Um,
printed.
And I haven't spoken with the Comptroller's office about this because we can do one of 2 things. I know what I prefer, but I'm gonna leave it up to the Comptroller's office. Because we're using, we have accounts set up for the federal dollars, we could expend it out of that fund. It's an AC fund. I prefer to see it in the general fund, just for transparency, it's all in the same spot instead of being over. So you're always aware of what the total numbers are. So my goal was to come to E&A and add those and to get them into the budget. And quite honestly, what we can do probably for E&A on Monday is add them on Monday so that when you get the budget
Then you transfer
next
them
week,
over to
they're
TV.
in there.
And that would probably be a lot easier than us doing it.
Yeah.
So, fine.
One thing I'd like to add, 7 vacancies now. We are gonna have a captain retiring at the end of this month, and a sergeant retiring in March.
Well, it's 2 additions.
I'm sorry?
You have the test already for those, or people on it, that are eligible for those positions?
We have an eligible list that we just got now, and we just filled 2 vacancies with lateral transfers from Netta County. Yeah.
So, okay, just obviously that line, because that was another thing that I was gonna ask you. So, in your 2021-22 salary line, you have $8,427,749, and then the differentiation is it's $214,972. So where does the longevity amount 219 come from? It's just off by about 5,000, which isn't that big a deal. I just want to make sure that.
I'd have to check. I know that because of a recent death, as it relates to payroll for the police department, a police officer has stepped in temporarily. They have just hired someone, so he prepared those numbers. So I can check on it.
Just the total from the salary line from the year prior to the current year doesn't add up.
Okay, I can check on that.
I got, you got it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go on.
So, I know you still haven't have a contract yet, right? So when I'm looking at all these numbers, are these gonna change significantly? So we passed the budget on April 1st, so you guys settle on April 2nd. Are all these numbers in the left over here on the salary line, is that all gonna change?
Yes.
And to what extent? And the reason why I say that, because what's gonna happen for next year? In other words, if this is gonna go up astronomically.
Do you have money in here somewhere for increases possibly?
She's not gonna ever admit that. She's not gonna admit that. I can tell
Well,
you
the
where she's
reason why I
got the
say
money.
because.
No, I'm saying in another line item where it's,
I can tell you where the line item is, if you want.
I will tell you,
General.
we have probably 4 or 5 positions that we've been funding the past couple of years that we haven't filled, not unlike the grants writer position. Okay, so that's number 1.
yeah.
Number 2, there's a variety of other things going on here. We take a look at sales tax. I've estimated sales tax perhaps a little less than might come in. You know, I'm looking at numbers, trying to be conservative on that, so there's that element. There's also a timing element. Yes, we have probably 12 positions open for police officers. We're not gonna have them all hired immediately. We're gonna try, they're gonna do their very best. So there's a lot in there.
And obviously, our budget year isn't completed, so when you find an extra $1.5 million and extra of this budget year, that could be transferred over. So that's the problem of having the audit from last year and finishing the audit this year. Does that
In
make sense?
government, you actually have 3 budgets open at the same time. Yeah, 3 years in a row, and you're just constantly trying to smooth things out, but yet it's gotta be accurate. It's gotta be the events that took place during that year. I know I'm not answering your question the way you want me to say, here it is and here's the line. Are we going to have all of it? Probably not. And that means we're gonna have to cut costs other places or try to find revenues other places.
So, how much do you think is gonna go up when they do fire? Open, I know you probably did that already. As well as the fire department, because they're the ones, you know, they're-
All I can say is that CSEA settled for 3% a year.
So if you estimate 3%,
And so
should
did
give you a
DPW,
number.
for all intents and purposes.
The only reason why I'm asking all these questions is, are we setting up the budget for next year for failure? If you don't,
Mark, I think if she committed to a number, that would impact contract negotiations too, you know, that's.
What I'm worried about is what's gonna happen next year. We have a
I'm worried
zero
about it
budget-
too.
We have a zero budget this year,
Right.
and we don't settle, and then you hang out for another year without settling. I mean, when's it come to an end? We can keep on kicking the can to the right,
Well,
but it just doesn't make sense.
Can I just touch on that too? I mean, we estimated for $74 million in our budget last year, right?
Well, we actually.
We're not spending all that $74 million this year. And you could and I could tell you several line items, but you're not gonna know what the excess is until
It's always an
the next
estimate,
audit's
right.
going to be complete. So I can tell you for a fact that I know that, I don't think that it unpacked that, but the settlement of any contract, that much.
So I thought maybe it would be better to settle.
You got 2 of them though, right? Police and fire, right?
Oh, you have 3, but you got CSE too.
No, CSE settled.
Oh, just settled as well.
Yeah.
CSC is done.
And is that in this budget?
It is, and that's what kind of, the past couple of weeks, I've been doing some late nights because I wanted to have an accurate picture for you in there.
I just got a couple of questions for the chief, or water, I guess, in regards to that. So, there's a couple line items, like UPD special services overtime. What, can we just touch base on that? It's actually on page 27. 53128, 103.
So I will say that I budgeted this line item for the police department. This consists of various reimbursements. You'll also see a revenue line similar to this number for everything from things that we do at the auditorium to the Boilermaker. And Chief, I don't know.
St. Patrick's Day Parade.
There's a lot of police overtime that's contracted out that we get totally reimbursed for.
And that was my question. So obviously, there's a revenue source.
I can give you,
170.
I give you one example, like the
St. Elizabeth's,
New York State, yeah, well, maybe not, we'll see. But one example would be, we've been doing this for almost 10 years now, the courts, the New York State United Court System, they pay for a full police officer's position, but they also fund 2 overtime positions. And they roughly, in a contract that they have with us on a yearly basis, they allow up to $350,000 in overtime if need be.
And that was my question. I didn't know if it was ARPA funding that was covering an overtime cost for a special service, or if it was specifically something that we were doing that was contracted.
So why is
So
it?
can I
if-
The
if-
2 biggest
I'm
costs
sorry.
would be the courts and the auditorium.
And this is like part of our budget that's actually, that I always had an issue with, is that the revenue line should be underneath the expenditure.
So where is the revenue line?
It's
Can
up
I ask?
under revenues, so
So
let's.
why is it in here if we're getting paid back?
Because we are spending.
You have to expend it in order to pay the people.
Government accounting is a little bit different. You have to separate it for transparency. You can't just net it against the revenues against the expense.
And not put that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but technically, you're not,
It is.
you're paying it, but you're getting it back.
Right, but you have to show
You have
where
to
you're
say, you have to show
providing
it.
those services to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I got, yeah. I
Because
got
you're
it.
getting money in, so your budget, because you're getting money in, your budget has to be even on those lines. So you have to
Well,
show
is there a line that shows where that money's
That's
coming in?
That's what she's
Oh,
looking
okay,
for.
Okay,
That's what she's looking
all
for.
right.
Page 5,
Okay,
middle.
now it makes sense, easy, take it
Yeah,
easy.
page 5, middle of the page.
Take it-
Basically wash each other out.
Oh.
Page 5?
Yeah, it's a little bit different. When I went through my analysis on this one, I'm like, should it be exactly the same? And it never is, so I kind of looked at historicals.
You gotta make sure it's counted. I can't even see.
Okay,
It was money.
160, so you're just off by about 10,000.
Hold me.
Where are you? Okay.
I'm on
You're
page 5, middle
five.
page,
How far?
8404
152.
152
Okay. Oh, yeah, I see it, yeah.
Okay. And,
While we're on this page, I have a quick question, Heather, unrelated to this, super quick.
Okay.
I was gonna email you this for an amendment. We have we have 25 grand in Kennedy Garage monthly. I just put a check mark next to that for me for next week.
I will.
All right.
That was
Okay.
something that
Sorry.
Mike Mahoney thought we should put in, so that's what I did.
All right, cool.
We have a couple other questions. As far as the police uniform division, the salary line increased by about $600,000. If you're out of contract for 2 years.
But as I was mentioning when they first started, if you look at, one's up 600, one's down 600, and I think the chiefs, we're gonna explain that, are you gonna change?
Yeah, what happens is we took a crime prevention unit. We thought they were better supervised under uniform patrol rather than CID. So we just moved those officers to uniform patrol, and that additional cost of uniform patrol is reflected based on just moving that unit to a different division.
And they've been doing a wonderful job.
Another gun last night, 4 in 6 days.
Yes, sir.
And you could tell that whatever division that they're in now, they're doing their job.
They're doing excellent. The scary thing is these ghost guns are out there.
Yeah, I can.
Wait, what is
okay,
it?
Can you do me a favor? Okay, I understand that guns are, you can buy a manufactured gun. So what makes a ghost gun actually different? So they're buying individual pieces so that the serial numbers don't match up to the actual gun? What is the concern of a ghost gun compared to like a normal?
Ghost gun, the word ghost is used to basically say it's an untraceable gun, basically what it is.
So that's what it is. So it's serial numbers and things like that aren't, so they're not registered, like a normal gun that's manufactured through a manufacturer, has a serial number, so on and so forth. These ones are just parts that you buy that don't actually have a serial number, that weren't manufactured.
Right, and they avoid the legal licensing process. The problem is they're selling these kits where they can sell all these parts, 80% of the gun legally, the parts of the gun, and then the other 20%, they're finding parts from gun dealers, or if you're that advanced, there's some people that have these 3D printers that can make actual parts for the gun that make it workable. So we are seeing more and more of these ghost guns, and it's amazing the amount of weaponry that's out there.
And obviously it doesn't really make a difference, but like, do you find that these guns have different magazine clips and so on and so forth that even would be illegal to possess as a registered gun owner?
You bring a great point. When the governor back years ago, created laws for the SAFE Act, really had no impact on the illegal gun trade because, I've got, just recently recovered handguns that we've taken out the street. They're all coming with extended magazines, or this last homicide, there was actually a drum that was attached to the magazine well of this semi-automatic pistol that can hold up to 75 rounds.
Really?
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. So as far as like charging somebody for, sorry, my mic wasn't on, and I got the message again.
Meeting, but we'll go with the question.
What's that?
Go ahead.
No, I was just asking, like, is there an increased charge for having an extensive magazine clip on it, or is that charge still the same because it's still a gun, just even though it's illegal no matter what?
Typically, those charges, they'll go through grand jury. We'll charge the initial, the offenses for the unlawful possession of the handgun, and the additional charges usually, added on during grand jury.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. I have a couple other questions. There was, where was it? And Heather, this I guess is a question for you. And I'll get you guys to a certain point, but Chief, in the meantime that I'm talking about this, can we touch base on the police chief's test and the deputy chief's test that was given out? I mean, is there something that we should be expecting? Like, what is your take on that, so to speak? Like, your understanding of why that test was actually giving out, or so on and so forth?
The mayor indicated to me he was going to call for a deputy chiefs and chiefs test. I have no immediate plans to retire at this time. I know in the past, the mayor has given tests, just in the event that one of us would retire. But right now, I have no immediate plans to retire, and I don't think the deputy chief does either.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're both too young.
I noticed that you did update the qualifications per civil service, and I never seen those qualifications discussed at a meeting, and then obviously the next meeting, it wasn't on the agenda, which that's a whole other topic that I'm sure will get brought up, but you did update those qualifications. Is that something that it was requested from you, is what I read in the agenda, that you were asked to update the qualifications? Like, what was that in regards to?
One thing that's been extremely available to a lot of chiefs across this state and the country is I had the benefit in 2005 to attend the FBI National Police Academy in Quantico, Virginia. It's a 10-week program, training course, and I can tell you, it's extremely valuable training to have, because not only do you learn about the different resources that are available to police departments federally, but also the networking that you're able to make with police chiefs and sheriffs from all over the country. That was one of the recommendations I made, and the years of the amount of experience as a supervisor was important to me as well.
Good. Thank you. The other one was just the police employee benefits for retirement.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed back in 2021, 2022, and I had discussed this with you, but
What page are you
I'm on page 53,
Mm-hmm.
when you're talking the second one down where it's police employee benefits. Can we just discuss what the increase from the 3.2 million to the 4.1 back down to the 3.8 was?
Okay, so one of them's a budget, actually two of them are budget, and one of them's actual. So, as you know, every year, and I wasn't gonna discuss what benefits tonight, but I can give you the state budget estimate that they supply.
Yeah, if you could.
Yeah,
We don't
I
have to discuss it tonight. We can discuss it in another meeting if you want to
I'll send
provide
it to
that.
all of you, but really, what it really comes down to, and part of the struggle, is we don't settle our contracts timely.
Right.
And so we have this push-me-pulley of, at 1 year, we wind up with all these retros, and so they see that, OSC sees those numbers, and thinks that's their actual salary for the year, right? But it isn't, because there's retros in there from past years. So we have this speeding up sometimes and a slowing down. And this current year, because the stock market did so well, that smoothing technique, right, from the recession that kind of has now faded past from 5 or 6 years ago. So the numbers have come down a little bit. But I just take their number. I could try to figure it out, but I have to tell you, I don't have that skill set.
So let me ask you a question too, and this is in regards to healthcare, and obviously the city's looking to go self-insured, which it's not 100% self-insured, but just on the face of it, self-insured, right? So if you're looking at, because it says to be determined on page 99,
Yep.
as far as
Just the account numbers.
as far as the account numbers. So let me ask you a question. So would those lines transfer out from, say, medical?
Yep.
So you would just rename that A5, 902, 803?
No, what this will be its own separate fund. OSC requires that when you have a self-insurance fund, you have its own separate fund. So what'll happen is every month out of medical, out of police, that medical that's going for them to pay Excellus, it will come out of there and come into this fund as an interfund revenue. So you'll see it as an expense out of the general fund and a revenue to this fund.
So every police, the fire, DPW, they're all gonna have a separate medical line expense that you're gonna draw from and put in a combined fund.
Yeah,
When-
which they,
As it's used over the course of whatever, the year.
Yes, and it will also have a separate bank account.
All right, when does this kick in? June? Is it June?
April 1st.
it would be.
April 1st? The medical doesn't start June, it starts April, not June?
April
Somebody
1st.
told me June.
So-
Why June?
April
So-
1st, I don't know.
So
And I see Teamster dental and optical, that's
That's
totally different?
Totally different.
All right.
The HRA is different, HSA, all of that is different. It's only
All
the
right.
medical for Excellus.
So let me ask you a question too. So as far as the 3,875, 475, what you did was you broke it down for what the contribution actually is and what the actual cost to the city is?
Yes.
Is that what you did?
Yeah.
So the member contribution is actually in the medical
Yes.
of that? Okay. Why did you break that down?
Because I thought it was important to show what the member contribution is. I mean, there's a lot that is said about member contribution. And so I felt it was important to display that as part of transparency.
Okay, to that point, so here's.
Because those members are paying for that.
Here's a couple of questions that I'm gonna have in regards to that. So, the police department already settled a contract with employee contributions, right? The 20% contribution for its
Yes.
employees for
For
that.
actives, yes.
Okay, so we do gotta take into consideration as far as employee contributions come in, that
Yep.
for fire, for example, that they haven't settled a contract in order to even up that employee contribution for its medical. Okay. Another question, then, never mind, I'll wait. This has nothing to do with police. I'll wait. So you're 2 years out of a contract?
Almost 2 years, yeah.
So that's for uniform patrol, captain, whatever, all the way up to you guys?
April 1st.
So bottom up?
It'll be 2 years.
You better take a look at those fire chief raises, it better get comparable to that one. Okay.
You got-
Any other questions?
Yeah, just one thing here. Is this a typo on this, under the police officers, or was one of them that was
What
90
page are you on, Joe?
What's that?
What page are you on?
I can't even see. 61. 61 with all the salary. So there's one police officer, he was making 90,019, and he went to 78,66. Is that a typo?
Yes, no, it is not.
Oh, okay.
Chiefs, do you want it, that has to do with the demotion of a particular person?
Oh, from when they, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we recently demoted a sergeant to a patrolman.
Okay.
For discipline.
Okay.
But that wasn't a call that wasn't a departmental call, that was more of a administrative call, so to speak. I mean, I don't want to get into particulars, but, I mean.
Yeah, I noticed. Yeah, it has to do with the,
I know what it
the
is.
walkout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right,
But good catch, Councilman Beatrice.
one thing,
Pretty detailed. There you go.
Not bad
No.
for
I'm just trying, I
His
can't.
head isn't big enough.
Wait, my head's not big,
No, it's
and
really
number
not
one,
gonna
I
fit.
can't see. I can't even see the
No, it's really,
pages.
his lips are gonna get bigger too.
Yeah.
just another thing, I didn't look at it yet, but is there any equipment involved in this for them, additional equipment?
No, it is the mayor's goal to present a capital budget within the next 2 weeks. which
Okay,
also
so we'll
takes
see it
into
then, what their needs are.
consideration of
But
ARPA,
this is like what's aggravating, so then we're gonna have to go and amend the budget for a
No.
capital budget? So
No.
he's gonna keep that separate? Is
Yes,
that gonna
and
be
we
like
have-
ARPA funding and stuff like that?
Yes, and we
Okay.
have for the past several years, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions?
I'm gonna,
Come on, come up with a couple, Sam.
I'm done.
I'm
I
just
didn't get the
gonna-
memo for the powder blue shirt, but
I know.
I'll try next
oh,
time.
wow, I didn't even recognize that. I haven't worn this shirt in about 10 years.
Okay. Next up,
Next up, Rich Maxwell, our.
Thank you, gentlemen.
assessor.
Thanks, chiefs.
Thank you.
This is on page 16.
Thank you.
Get a dress?
Page
You
16.
got the memo too. Page 16?
Yeah, anywhere you want to sit.
have a good night.
Bye, guys. We'll see you later.
I can't even read.
Chief, have a good night.
Yeah, the feet's a little warm.
What page, Heather?
Page 16?
Yeah, okay, I kind of figured that.
Page 16.
I know. I kind of took the fall for everybody.
I have a question.
What page we on?
Page 16?
What page?
Page 16.
And I got the blue memo,
night, Chief.
okay?
That's what I said, yeah, thank you. I'm glad you jumped on board.
Okay. fire
I have a
away.
question. Ready? So last year, Heather, I remember that, so since Marima works in the assessment office, she was being paid by, all of her salary was coming out of assessment, and our previous assessor thought some of that should be charged back to Corporation Council because she spends, she splits her time evenly between assessment and Corporation Council? Do you remember this last year?
I do. She is spending some time assisting urban renewal.
Okay.
We added new staff this year. We have 2 new lawyers.
Okay.
So she is doing that. In fact, the mayor, it's kind of interesting you bring it up because we met with the mayor and the assessor last week to talk about that.
Mhm.
We're assessing her time right now as to where it should go to.
Okay.
But she spends the majority of her time right now doing data collection, data reporting, and also tax service, which is part of the assessor's office.
Okay. So should all of her salary be coming out of the assessor's budget is what I'm asking? Okay.
A couple of questions.
For the bar?
For the board?
There's usually one just about every year.
One about, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, what is your take on a reevaluation inside the city?
Yeah, there we go.
Because here's
I asked them that last meeting.
Well, here's a problem that I have, okay? The county has a 0% tax increase for the city. Based on our evaluation, the city gets paid on taxes based on our levy for the county, okay? So no matter what, they come out 0%, they come out, that's it. The city gets dinged for that.
Yes.
Because of the fact that we haven't had a real evaluation since, what, I think like 1993? 1999?
Mm-hmm.
That was the last time?
Mm-hmm.
That was before, prior to that. The city has about $20 million left for ARPA funding. Is there a discussion that you had with the city to possibly utilize those funds for reevaluation inside the city to kind of get us up to date?
I don't discuss where they're gonna get the funds from, I just let
No,
them
that's
know
fine.
what it's gonna cost.
Sure, so have you been in discussion with them as far as, asking for a reval? I mean, we just got an announcement from the mayor's office that our assessment went up $7 million. So to me, it seems that not having this reval with the progress that has happened inside the city, that, you know, we're really losing out in, you know, a lot of areas as far as, you know, what they're actually paying in taxes. I mean, there's been a lot of transformation in certain areas, but I would hope that, you know, as a comptroller, and I know that we had these discussions with Dave Williams prior to that and so on and so forth, and obviously funding was a big issue with the city, but is that something that you would be willing to discuss and push for as a new assessor?
I've done revals across the whole of New York State for 20 years. So yeah, I've got experience doing reevaluations. I know how they all work. I've managed them also from the assessor side. So yeah, you desperately need a reval here. You don't have, inside of the software that we use, you don't currently have any modeling capabilities to help us as we put on new properties and updates, because your models are from 1999. They're useless.
Right.
Nothing's been updated in there. So, yeah. I mean, and I've also talked about the possibility of how much we could save if we did a lot of it in-house, because the residential side is a little bit easier than the commercial, and we could do a lot in-house, but it would change, you know, the
They'd have to
budget line.
outsource the commercial.
How
and they
much would it
handle
cost,
residential.
roughly?
Anywhere from $75 to $100 a parcel, and you got 22,000 parcels.
Do the math for me on that.
1.8 to 2.2 million.
Okay, thank you very much.
But that's if it was outsourced.
Yes.
So how much of a savings do you think if that could be something that you could potentially do inside?
Well, you probably need to bring in 2 more data collectors and 1 expert on the modeling software.
Now, let me ask you a question. So you've done revals, like you said, throughout the state of New York. Has there ever been like a earth-shattering change in somebody's?
Yes.
There has. Okay, so let me ask you a question. So as a municipality, how do you handle those types of situations? Because your baseline tax value doesn't change, right? That always stays the same.
Your levy is your levy. Your budget is your budget.
Right.
Okay, that does not, you do not get any more money for your municipality by doing a reval. All you do is change the mixture of the individuals in those 22,000 parcels, who's paying. Some are gonna pay more and some are gonna pay less. Typically, the ones that are gonna pay more are the ones that are gonna have the funds and to complain. And the ones that are gonna pay less,
So in the end, the number's gonna stay the same, but some are gonna pay more, some is gonna pay
Yes.
So like,
less.
for example, for like the Parkway, right, you really haven't seen any new development, maybe just updates to some homes, so on and so forth. So what they're paying in taxes is based on the equalization rate. You've also seen a lot of progress in other areas.
Yes.
For example, you know, that have had new development, so on and so forth. So I think for the city of Utica standpoint, yes, there might be a change to certain areas, but there has been a lot of new development in certain
Yeah.
areas that might not have had that development back in 1999, so to speak. So me personally, I see it as being beneficial to everybody, because I think that those areas that haven't had that much,
So-
they've had that new development will be paying into that.
Well, I know
Councilman
it's a work in
DeBrango,
progress,
can I-
right? I know you have communication with the administration. It's a work in progress. Hopefully they could come up with something. So let's get to the budget. I know Mr. Miola has a question.
I think you're doing a great job as an assessor. I know you got thrown into this and you have a lot of hurdles and you're adjusting and getting everything up to par. But I just want to clarify, tax increases. When there's no tax increase in the city of Utica, there isn't any. When there's a supposedly no tax increase for the county, there is equalization. With that said, it's very simple. An average house worth about $80,000 in your city, their county taxes went up on an average of $50 a year. So if you go back, I think the guy showed me since 2000, I would say 2018 when he bought the house, when they started equalization, from then to now, an average house that's assessed at $80,000 went up at least $50 a year. Now, another question, if it's assessed for something, our assessed value went up, how could our equalization?
The assessed value did not go up.
Right, it stayed the same. That's
The
what
assessed
your
value
assessment
stays
is.
the same.
Okay.
What they see on their bill is the market value. So you show them, this is your assessed, but there's also a market value, which is just multiplying it by the equalization rate to say, okay, if you had this property to sell, if it's 80, it should be worth about 164,000 or something like that for market value.
All right, with that said, if compared to equalization rate, that means the city's assessed value dropped, where that's why they're raising it every year?
No, the assessed value actually of the city has increased because because you have properties that have been improved. So if a property gets improved, you raise their value. So you've got,
Of course.
look at all the different properties that have
Of course, we'll
changed.
reassess it. I got the dentist agreements, I got it.
Yeah.
But how does the county work the equalization rate redundantly to raise their taxes? The people in the city of Utica.
It's warrant
Most of the
based.
people
Can you
in the city-
elaborate on the warrant based system?
If you had a 0% evaluation rate, if you had an actual assessment,
How can they qualify?
The equalization rate is determined by the state of New York, not by the county. So the state comes back and says, okay, I mean, I haven't gone through it yet because it just came to me today. But here is what they believe happens to business and housing and utilities in Utica. And this is preliminary stuff for equalization rate. And that comes from the state, does not come from the county. But if other communities inside there don't have the same type of changes in their equalization rate, if our equalization rate is greater than theirs, we're gonna pick up a bigger piece. And that's all done by the state. County doesn't do a thing with it. It just, once the equalization rate is given, they just apply it.
So the state applies the equalization rate, is that
Yes,
correct?
Yes,
So if
and they do
if we-
sampling and stuff. They monitor all of our sales. They, I have to forward all the sales and everything into them. So they monitor that and look at it versus the assessed rate and give you an equalization rate based off of what properties are selling for.
So are you having the opportunity to check their results of their equalization rate compared to what you're figuring out? All right, when you get that, just give us a call, maybe. If it's off a little bit, we'll give them a call.
Councilman Miola? Or can I?
Go ahead.
I can work that as an issue, but typically,
Because I want, the state, if
I
the state is wrong.
I tell them what sales they can use.
Okay.
And there's the assessed value. So trying to tell them they might be wrong is real difficult because I told them what sales they can use. These are valid sales.
Is there a possibility sometimes their calculations are wrong after they give you the format back on how they come to the calculations?
percentage.
It's just a percentage.
That's all they do?
Yeah.
So it's a simple
We're
percentage?
gonna- Just, President Galimi, 1 second, then Joe Beatrice.
No, that I was just gonna add to something that Councilman Mule is bringing up. As far as our budget goes, different agreements like pilots and/or properties coming off the tax roll also affect how much the remaining taxpayers pay towards the county, because as you'll attest, it's warrant based. So if, I mean, I went through the calculations. So if you have 5 or 6 properties come off the tax rolls, they're no longer paying county or
pilot programs.
Well,
tax
regardless,
exempt.
what
Yeah.
happens is the county, as explained from the county, the way I've been explained to from the county is, the state says they are going to get X amount of dollars in property taxes from the city of Utica parcels, regardless of how many parcels there are paying them. So if there was only 2 parcels left paying taxes, but the rest are still valued what they're valued, those 2 parcels, this is the most extreme case, will be responsible for the entire warrant going to the county. So that also plays into it.
Well, first off, most pilots.
Yeah, I wanted you to elaborate on this.
Yeah,
so,
most pilots, what they are put in place to do is, there was, okay, the current assessment on a property is $200,000. They're gonna come in and put a $4 million investment in.
Okay.
So they're given what you think is zero amount, but typically they pay against the 200,000 as the
Assessed value you start with, yeah.
They start against that, and then they start paying against the increased value of the property over the life of the pilot. That's the typical way pilots are done.
5 years, 10 years, depends what it is.
Yeah, but again, sometimes
Mike?
in
Yeah, it wasn't-
negotiations, they change, you know, I can't say all of them doing that, but most of them do
It's
that.
basically, if
I
the
guess,
city's
hang on.
equalization rate was a 0.
Well, so hang on, because my comment wasn't necessarily 100%, well, it was like 10% to do with pilots and 90% to do with the fact that as the county continues to consume property and as other entities consume property that take it off the tax rolls in totality, our warrant due to the county is the same because they're still valued under the county. So, you know, that's why MVCC does what it does to our county taxes. That's why all these different things. So if, for example, if the county buys up 20 properties, turns them into parking lots, whatever those valuations are still on the warrant.
If the county does it, let them pay their own taxes and not make our city taxpayers recuperate.
And that's
Is that-
why I was-
do you
that's
feel
why I
that
wanted to
way?
bring that up while you were
All right,
talking.
you feel that way,
Right,
Michael? I
right,
feel
right.
that way.
Exactly.
Let's move on a little bit. Joe B?
So, 2 questions. So, they said our tax assessment went up $7 million.
Mhm.
What did the city actually get from that $7 million? How much did we actually
Bill
recoup?
Morehouse sent an email, $189,000.
$189,210.
Okay, you guys are right on top of things. So, and then my last question is, what is the percentage in the city of non-profit houses? I mean, not houses, but buildings. Who pays, what is that percentage of?
It's like nonprofit,
Well-
taxable.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not tax exempt is what I'm saying.
Right,
What is
it's-
the percentage of?
Yeah,
You'll see.
Yeah, all you have to do is turn, it's right
Yeah.
here in your, under tax information, as to, yeah, it's not 28, but it's, under tax information, right near the front, past the mayor's message. The rural section summary, it talks about what the wholly exempt properties are, 561 million.
okay. But inside of that are the pilots.
Yes, I know.
So that's, they're, yeah. Well,
Special franchise?
that's like railroad and things.
Any other questions?
No?
Anything pertaining to the budget?
No, that's fine.
I know this does pertain to the budget in a way, but any actual numbers that we're seeing on paper that anybody have any issues with?
This budget's easy, we're just trying to generate some more money.
Mr. President Galimi? Go ahead.
I just had one question. If the council would want this, because obviously we have some time here, is there any way you could provide the council with, even if it was a pretty rough estimate of a revail, so the council could consider that if they wanted to do so?
Yeah, I mean, the rough estimate of a total reval is between 1.8 and 2.2.
All right, so you're confident with them rolling with that right now if they wanted to consider that in the budget process?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I've bid on these types
Yeah,
of jobs
it was,
myself.
yeah, it was 1.5 a couple years ago, so
Yeah.
I figured that was right in line,
Yeah.
so.
Or
Okay.
we could just keep our fingers crossed that we can increase people's property taxes up to 1%.
Okay, I
You-
think we're
Thank
done.
you. It's all right.
Your budget is your budget, so you're not gonna go and get it from anyplace
No,
else.
and I appreciate that.
Okay.
And I think that's the most important part to the actual, having the equalization rate at 0, is because you wouldn't have these confusing things with the county
Right.
as far as equalization rate goes and so on and so forth.
And once you get it there to 0, and if I have that expert with the system, we can keep it there and not have to go through
You wouldn't have to submit anything.
this huge,
Right.
you know.
Are we
rigmarole
purchasing
again.
software and everything for this?
Pardon?
Are we purchasing any software?
We got the software.
Okay, so you're all set with that, you just have to
Yeah, that's
update
the
it?
RPS software that's provided to us by the state. Inside of that is how you do the reval.
Okay,
You know,
So that's all we need to do is approve the revale.
okay,
Yeah.
We don't have the authority.
right. Okay, all set?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions? Heather, anything else?
Yes, I'm just trying to help somebody get in.
I just want to reiterate now, the time of the meetings for the next meeting, I thought it was from 5 to 6. Does anybody see 4:30 or no?
Yeah, it's 4:30 to 6.
4:30 to 6? Okay, it was scheduled on the day we had,
So-
we had our
so
other
the-
meeting, so.
The only other two that we were gonna look at tonight was the mayor's budget and my budget. So page 13 and page 15. My budget, there really isn't.
Avoid that.
Thank you.
As it relates to the mayor's budget, you can hold on just a second. What page are you on? 13? 13. Hold on just a second.
There's not much there.
No, there isn't. Sorry about this. Yeah, I mean, there's not much to the mayor or to budget. I just didn't know if you had any questions for me.
I do.
Okay?
So when you did pay raises throughout
Mhm.
the workers, are they all the same?
No. Marcus Phillips, head of codes, during the middle of the year, the mayor did a realignment of codes. And so Marcus is up a couple of $1,000s more than 3% of all department heads. There is a small realignment of the engineering department, because we were concerned about our loss of talent there. So there are several people that are going up, that are CSEA employees that are going up steps. Let me just take a look at the chart here.
Well, the mayor's went up 7% this year?
6%?
7?
Did I make a mistake? Thought I multiplied it by .106.
From 93 to 99. Okay, 90.
Holy cow, I'm becoming mayor of Utica next year.
He's probably about 80th person, highest person.
On the payroll.
No, it's 6%.
Yep, 1,000, yeah.
I'm just gonna
You're
bust
better off being chief of staff.
the real quickly here. City clerk, she put forward for both herself and the deputy last year. You may recall she wanted there was a big increase requested. We did, half of it was approved and the other half was in this year. There's a couple of changes that are taking place. Becky Duvall, who has been the DPW receptionist, is now moving into Donna Taser's old position, the bookkeeper for the police department. So there's an increase there to her for office manager. We have an increase, not a step increase, but a grade increase for Jennifer Carbone within the civil service department. You may recall we added her position last year to assist Lori Robel. And there is a grade increase for her. Also for the grant writer for the police department, because we did hire someone that actually has some background and came from the United County Sheriff's
I saw that
Department.
was kicked up, yeah.
Sheriff's Department, so we're pretty excited about that. And so that went up a grade or two. We talked about codes. Frank Matolo, that's probably one of, he has been a CSE employee for quite a while. He had a small stipend. You see the stipend is no longer there, and he also jumped several grades to what we felt that his value was. It was a request that he made, and the mayor obliged. And I believe those are the only increases outside of 3% that I can think of. If I think of anything else that I haven't told you about, I'll drop you an email.
I know the deputy chief at the fire department went up.
Yes, as I mentioned earlier.
But that'll be.
The police
talked about.
chief's contract mirrors the time period of the police, the PBA. The chief's does not. I know there was a big question about, and that's part of the struggle, and I think Ms. Aiello reached out to me about that. Why in the middle of the year, or why?
It was June. It wasn't the middle.
Oh, it was June, okay.
It was June.
Yeah, so when I went to do the budget last year, that contract hadn't been settled. And Jim Noon was still in the fire.
At
fire.
107.
Yeah. Then he got out of it and he became part of the deputy chief, or the chief's contract of 2. And so in June, it was approved by E&A. At the time I did the budget, I had no idea they were even in negotiations, or I would have brought it up. I didn't know. When it was approved by E&A in June, when I went to do this budget, I simply, and even if you look at any of the CSEA people, that's what took so long the past couple of weeks, because they just approved their increases. For last year's number, I put the actual last year's number, because I wanted it to show exactly what it was. If I left the number that was in last year's budget, you would see this big increase all over the place, and you'd say, what are we doing? So I'm trying to show apples to apples, and that's the same thing that happened with the two fire chiefs.
And that's the same thing that we talked about the transfer of funds. We haven't seen that yet because there was still money under that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Yep,
'Cause
I'm gonna
we
have to do it.
should see that, because
You're
that'll
also
go-
gonna see it for every cost center
Okay.
in the fire department, because we settled their contract for 2 years. So every cost center, I mean, and as I mentioned to you, that the gentleman that brought that all up, he neglected to talk about the cost centers for the fire department and their retro. I'm gonna have to be coming to you, because it's gonna be quite a change. And you know, we've been pretty successful the past couple of years in trying to live within our cost centers, and that's the same way the fire department's done a fantastic job living in their cost centers. But not unlike Councilman Williamson's question, as it relates to when you settle a contract that's 2 years old, you have big retro numbers in there. It's not so much, I've put money away in prior years, I'm estimating backwards when I can, but you have that roll forward, right? It's not so much about retro, when you have something 2 or 3
It's
years
compounded,
old.
it's compounded.
Compounded, yeah.
Well,
So,
they need to get that settled.
Yeah.
That's what they need to do.
Any other questions?
Tyler, you did a wonderful job. Thank you.
All departments, thank you.
What was I gonna say? One thing, hold on. Something I had to tell Celeste.
Excuse me?
I had to tell you something I forgot, but it'll come back to me.
Okay.
Meeting closed.
Chairman?
Second.
Thank you.
We're out.
I won't leave the room immediately, Frank. I'll give you a couple minutes to